everybody. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. And thank you for being here. I know there are lots of other exciting things going on at the conference, so appreciate you being here at our session. And today, I'm going to talk about the existential threat of AI agents, the threat that AI agents pose to survey research, what those threats are, and what some of the solutions are as well. And the start of this conversation is really anchored in this paper that came out a couple of months ago in PNAS, that the title of it is The Potential Existential Threat of Large Language Models to Online Survey Research. So the title of there being an existential threat to online research is not something that I came up with. It's from this paper, and this paper essentially found that AI agents can be easily spun up, and they're indistinguishable from human participants. And so the threat to AI, to online research, is that if you can't tell the difference between an AI agent taking your survey and a human participant taking your survey, then your survey might get swarmed by a bunch of AI agents, and you would never know. And so this is potentially a real major issue. I'm just curious, maybe just by raise of hands, of who here has seen this paper or is familiar with this paper? Just curious. Okay. Okay, so most of you. And who actually read the paper? Okay, also most of you. Okay, great. So great to know that the baseline that we're dealing with. So I'm going to be talking about this paper and its implications. The paper really did have a major impact. It seems like everybody's talking about it. About a month ago, there was an article in Science that essentially said that based on this paper from PNAS, sophisticated bots risk contaminating surveys, games, and other approaches designed to shed light on human behavior. Then shortly thereafter, a couple of weeks later, there was another article in Nature. And according to this article, again, AI chatbots are infiltrating social science surveys, and that it's possible now to create a chatbot that is indistinguishable from human participants. That's a quote from the title of the Nature article. And I happen to know that there are lots of other articles that are forthcoming from Association for Psychological Science journals. So this is just something that a lot of people are talking about and a lot of people are worried about. I was interviewed for both of these articles, both Science and Nature. And what I'm going to be talking about today is essentially the perspective that I shared with the journalists who wrote these two articles. And before I get to what I'm going to talk about, I just want to take a little bit of the sort of mysticism out of this idea of what an AI agent is that might take a survey, right? So kind of like demystify that. And I'm actually going to show you a video of me creating an AI agent and that AI agent going and taking a survey, okay? So what you're seeing here is Claude, and Claude has this extension that allows a user to not only chat with it, but to also tell it to open up a browser and then to give it instructions for doing stuff on that browser. So here, I know the text is probably a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to tell you the specific prompt that I gave to this LLM, okay? So I said, please take the survey at this URL. And so then I just pasted the URL to the survey. Assuming the persona of a 35-year-old Latina living in Texas, and for everything else, make up answers as appropriate. So that's all I did. That's all I said. Just 3 lines and the URL. And here's what happened. So this is sped up by about 10x. So you're seeing like what you're seeing here on the left side is that Claude is kind of like explaining what it's doing. Yes, I'm about to take the survey, and et cetera, et cetera. On the right side, there's this survey platform. It's called Engage. I'll tell you more about it later. You can kind of think of it as a Qualtrics survey. And so basically what it's doing is, and what you can see that it's doing, and I'll take you quickly through some of it, is, so here, for example, when we ask, okay, how do you identify? And it says a woman. Like, what is your age? And it says 35. What describes your race? And it says other. The reason why it's doing all that is because, remember, in those 2 sentences, I instructed it to take on that persona. So essentially, this is how easy it is to take a survey, get a URL to a Qualtrics survey, and then just have an AI agent complete it. Now, there are a couple of other things that I'll just point your attention to, and that is that here there's a kind of a trap question, an attention check. It says, are you currently a member of the non-existent LPAID group? So people who are not paying attention might say yes, but here, as you can see, it says, it will say no. Are you currently employed as a petroleum engineer? It says no. It's able to look at pictures and describe pictures. It's able to take sliders, matrix questions. Basically, it could do anything that a human being can do, and it's really great at passing attention checks. And in fact, it's better at passing attention checks than humans. And so that's basically the issue. And so today in this talk, I'm going to focus on several topics that are directly related to the issue of AI agents taking surveys and how to solve that problem, and some issues that are kind of tangential to that. So the first thing I actually want to talk about is I want to take a step back and talk about a related issue, which is human fraud. And the reason why I want to talk about human fraud and why it's so important to talk about human fraud when we talk about potential AI fraud is because for the last 10 years, everybody's been talking about how bots are taking surveys and providing terrible data, right? So this is before AI agents. Everybody was super concerned about bots taking surveys. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of those bad quality surveys that people attribute to bots are really just people. So if we can't make that distinction, it's going to be very difficult to know whether we can actually address the AI agent problem if every time we see bad data quality, we attribute it to a bot, right? So we have to know how to distinguish between bad data quality that's coming from a human and problems that are coming from AI agents. So that's the first thing that I'm going to talk about. Then I'm going to describe the problem of AI agents and some of the solutions that are available, and also some of the solutions that are going to be available in the future as we deal with this problem, as the problem becomes more sophisticated as we go on. So for the first maybe 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about this paper that I published with my colleagues. It just came out in APS a couple of weeks ago. And the title of this paper is "The Bots Ruining Social Science Are Not Bots at All. They're Humans." And if I can summarize this paper in just one sentence, it's this. All the bad data quality that you ever had in any of your surveys, it all came from humans. It did not come from bots. So if you ever collected terrible data quality, which I'm sure is true for most of you, it all came from humans. And this paper is a 10-year project that essentially traces the source of human bad quality data. And so let me talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to take a step back and talk about just the survey industry in general and human participants and how bad data arises from this industry that is quite large. There are 5 billion surveys, at least, that are completed around the world every year. And these are surveys that inform many different areas of our society, everything from polling to medical research to market research and, of course, social science. So this is really important. However, what we know about these 5 billion surveys is that about 30 to 40% of them are basically junk. There are dozens and dozens of studies that show this. Here I have an example from a study that was done in the market research industry, and I purposely wanted to share that with you because this is not an academic study. It's a study that was commissioned within the market research sort of world. And essentially they came to the same conclusion as a lot of people in academia who are doing research, which is basically that if you collect data on most online platforms, you will get about 30 to 40% of data that is completely junk and unusable and can completely skew results. So what they did was they collected data from thousands of people on 4 of the most popular platforms in market research, and also happens to be in academia as well. And in every single one of those platforms, essentially the rate of bad data quality ranged from anywhere from 33 to 43%. So it's somewhere between 30 and 40%. Now, at CloudResearch, we have been doing some investigative studies looking into this issue for probably the last 10 years. That's what the APS paper is based on. And so I just want to share some of what we know, some of what we learned. What we do is we see about 200 million surveys a year that go through CloudResearch, and we can see which ones are providing basically junk data. So what we'll do very often is we'll actually follow up with those people, and we will invite them to talk to us. We'll invite them to a video study, and we want to see who they are, where are they from, right? What we can learn about them. We've conducted hundreds of these interviews, and I'll share with you what we see in those videos. So what you're going to see right now is a person who was taking a study that was supposed to be only for people in the United States. It's very clear that this was problematic data, junk data, looks exactly like what a bot might do. We invited them, here's $50, would you want to jump on a video call with us? And as soon as the video is turned on, here's what we see. So we see a person who is in a room with dozens of computers. There are lots of people here. They're interacting with each other. It's very clear that they're not in the United States. They actually don't speak English very well. And they are talking to each other. In this particular case, they're from India, so they're speaking in a language which is Tamil. But we have the same kinds of videos from all over the world. So there's a whole cottage industry, and it spans from basically Europe to South America to North America. There are places like this in the United States, but it's mostly outside the United States. We call these click farms, and basically there are just people in these click farms. All they do all day long is try to infiltrate surveys for payment. So this is what they do. And they provide data that if you would see that data in your survey, you'll be convinced that it's a bot. And I'll show you how we know that too. So what we actually do once we have a chance to see them on a video is we'll actually ask them to complete a survey. So we'll open up a survey. In this particular case, it was a Qualtrics survey. And so the survey is right there on the screen, so we could see the split screen, and they're seeing us, and they're seeing the survey, okay? So they are completing the survey when they know we are looking at them. And so here's the kind of thing that we see. So for example, have you recently visited Thurman, West Virginia? Did you recently purchase a home in McMullen, Alabama, okay? And we have tons of questions like this. The answer is predictably yes, 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 yes. It's a yes to everything. There's a positivity bias to everything. There are certain rules of thumb that they use to answer these questions. Because they don't speak English very well, and sometimes not at all, the responses to open-ended questions are complete gibberish very often. Here are a bunch of questions about a non-existent hair care product. And do you use these products? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. Okay, now, did you recently purchase a home in McMullen, Alabama? That is actually a real place. okay? There are 32 people who are currently living in McMullen, Alabama, so anytime somebody claims to purchase a home there, they're either not paying attention or they're not being honest, right? Or they're just randomly saying yes to everything. We see from the patterns of responses of people in these click farms that they have a bias toward positivity, toward agreeableness, right? They'll strongly agree with something or agree with something rather than disagree, and they'll say yes rather than no, and that's actually very useful for catching them, knowing that they have these kinds of patterns. And again, they have gibberish answers usually to open-ended responses. So here are some other examples. Have you had your house entirely repainted in the last 7 days? Did you file like a homeowner's insurance because of a lightning strike? Okay. Now, I'll show you some other just images here. So this is sometimes we do this on Zoom, and sometimes we just have a survey that's not in Qualtrics, but it's more conversational. So I'll share some of this. Like, so did you attend Donald Trump's funeral recently? Right. And the answer is yes. It honestly doesn't matter what the question is. They're always going to say yes. And do you work as a petroleum engineer? The answer is predictably yes. Now, if you take the time to look on social media, you will find that there is easily observable activity from all of these people all over the world, and they have Facebook groups, they have YouTube groups that provide advice and help and instructions for people who want to infiltrate surveys, for ways to appear that you're in a particular country like the United States when you're somewhere else. What should your profile, demographic profile be to be most likely selected to be in a survey? So something like you want to be a black woman because those are not so easy to find, and so they take on these demographic personas, and of course there's ample advice for saying yes to as many questions as possible, and there's a reason for that as well. Is because in market research, which is the majority of surveys that are conducted online, typically market research surveys look for people who use a particular product. So if you use a product and you say, yes, I own Nike sneakers, oh, okay, great, now you qualify for that survey, we want to talk to you. If you say no, then they just reroute you and they don't pay you. So people have been conditioned to say yes to pretty much everything, right? And that's kind of the issue. So if we just think about the fact that there are 5 billion surveys being taken and 40% of them, right, are being taken by fraudulent participants from click farms and other places like that, we're talking about 2 billion surveys, right? That's a lot of surveys, it's a lot of data, and that is fundamentally the problem that researchers face. The problem that people have faced for the last 10 years are bad quality human respondents. The problem that people face today is bad quality from human respondents. It's likely that over time, as the AI agents become more sophisticated, that might become a problem as well, but overwhelmingly, it's human participants. So how do we deal with the problem of bad quality human respondents? So I'll just address that issue very quickly. But there are known ways to deal with these issues, and it's not very difficult. So there was a recent paper by Stagnato, their team at MIT. They compared 9 platforms, okay, in terms of data quality. So here, the one all the way on the right, that's Connect from CloudResearch. So if you could see here on the bottom, there's virtually no bad quality responses. There are research-grade social science platforms where if you collect data from those platforms, you pretty much will get clean data, okay? And that's the simplest thing to do. If you have a study, you just have to select, there are 1 or 2 platforms out there that provide good data, and you'll get good data. Now, you can't always you can't always do all your research on Connect, for example, right? Because sometimes you want to do research in a particular country, or you want to survey a particular niche group, right? That is hard to find. So sometimes you need to go and collect data from different platforms where the data quality is not great. So for example, here, all the way on the right, that's Lucid, and that's probably the most widely used platform in, right now Lucid became Cint, and that's probably the most widely used platform. They probably do about certainly more than 500 million surveys every year. And what they found here is that about 75% of the data was not usable. Now, Cint also supplies Qualtrics, for example. So if anybody ever goes on Qualtrics and you get sample from Qualtrics, Qualtrics doesn't have its own sample. It for many years used Lucid almost exclusively. Now Qualtrics doesn't use Lucid; it uses another aggregator. But the idea is the same, right? Some platforms provide good data quality, and you can get good data from them. Other platforms sometimes you will need to use because your research method requires it. So what do you do when you have to use a platform where you know that 50% of the data is not going to be great? You could still use those. Platforms, and I'll just share with you very quickly that I'm not going to get into the details of how to address data quality on platforms where you know that data quality is not great, but I just wrote a textbook that I will share with you. It's published by Cambridge University Press, and the title is Research in the Cloud, an Introduction to Modern Methods in Behavioral Science. It will be out on the Cambridge University Press website in May, and it's open access, so it's a free book. But until it's out on their website, it's available on the CloudResearch website. You can just access all the chapters. The first part, the book has 2 parts. The first part is just a research methods textbook, like an introduction to research methods textbook that focuses on project-oriented learning. It's got lots of great projects and lots of great data sets. But the part that's relevant for us is part 2, which is called Conducting Online Research. So chapter 9 is Understanding Participant Platforms, 10 is Data Quality, 11 is Data Quality Solutions, 12 is Data Cleaning. So there are 4 chapters that are, I think, really great. It synthesizes all the research that has been done over the last 10 years and provides really great solutions for data quality when you have to use platforms where the data quality is not necessarily great. So, okay, that's the background about data quality that comes from bad quality human participants. Now let's come back to the issue of AI agents. So again, this paper in PNAS says that it claims that there's this existential threat, and combining what we know about human fraud in survey research and the potential for AI agents to be used by those people, that's when you have potential problems at scale. Because there are millions of people who do this, right? And currently, they actually have a really hard time filling out surveys properly, right? Because many of them don't speak English very well, right? And so they're actually easy to catch if you use attention checks. But if those people got their hands on AI agents, right, and they were able to use AI agents to fill out surveys for them in any language, and the AI agents can pass attention checks really well, and they can fill out open-ended questions extremely well, well, then we can potentially have a real problem. So it's really like understanding the nature of human fraud in the survey industry and putting that together with the potential for that cottage industry to start using AI agents is when we really can start to potentially worry about what could what can happen. And okay, and so that's what I want to talk about right now. And essentially, I'm going to talk about three things with regard to AI agents. So number one, it is true that it is very easy to create an AI agent, as I showed right at the beginning, right, that can take surveys. So that part is true in terms of what the PNAS paper claims. The second claim is that those AI agents are indistinguishable from people. And it is true that there are certain aspects of those AI agents that are indistinguishable from people. Specifically, within the survey, if you look at how they respond to questions and how they pass attention checks and how they write open ends, that is indistinguishable from people. So that is true. However, there's the third part, which is the key part. And that is that there are other aspects of the behavior of AI agents that are actually 100% distinguishable from human beings. So while there are some aspects of AI agent behavior that is not distinguishable from human beings, and that's what was the focus of that paper, there are other aspects of AI agent behavior that is quite easy. In fact, it's elementary to detect. Okay? And so I'll talk about what those things are, and I'm going to talk about that using a platform, a survey platform called Engage. This is the survey platform that CloudResearch created. You can think of Engage as basically like a Qualtrics. So it can do whatever Qualtrics can do. It can, you can create all kinds of question types. There's randomization. There's survey logic. There's piping. You can do, you could put in pictures, videos. It's a sophisticated survey platform. However, it was built from the ground up with AI in mind. So, for example, the platform can be used to create synthetic respondents. So you can just go on the platform and say, I want 100 people who are airplane pilots, and I want, and so and it'll spin out 100 AI agents who fit that profile, and they'll fill out your survey. Okay, now why would you want that? To stress test your data, to do stress test your data analysis, maybe for teaching purposes, if you want to show students how to collect. There's lots of reasons, and there's also theoretically important reasons to see how that compares, for example, to human beings. But that is something that's built into the system. The other thing that's built into the system is the ability to conduct mixed methods research, which involves having a conversation with a person, like an open-ended conversation, and analyzing that data. And the open-ended conversation is being driven by an AI. So the AI is kind of like an interviewer. And that's going to be very relevant for the ability to catch AI agents. Okay, so that's the system. That's the platform that I'm going to show you. The key aspect of this platform, though, that is relevant for catching both AI agents and for catching bad quality human participants is what we call is that we embedded into the system something called an event streamer. An event streamer is literally like a video of everything that the participant is doing while they're taking the survey. So it literally looks at all the mouse movements and all the keystrokes and everything that is being done. And so let me give you an example that I want to demonstrate to you how easily you can tell whether a human is taking a survey, whether an AI agent is taking a survey, or whether it's a bad quality participant that's taking a survey, okay? So this is a survey that was taken by a real person. Now, there's a lot of text here. You don't have to worry about the text. But what you can see is that you can see the red line. That's literally a person who is reading the question, answering the question. And I want you to focus for a second on the trajectory of the arc of the mouse movement, right? You could see that it's curved. There's some randomness to it. Sometimes it overshoots the target and goes back. If you analyze the nature of these of the mouse movements, there are very distinct ways that people behave. So we refer to that as behavior metrics, right? when they are engaging with a mouse, when they're engaging with a screen, and when they're engaging with a survey. Now here is the part where we can see that this participant is a bad participant. So and this is where the interactive, open-ended component of the survey system becomes relevant. So here's a question, right? And the question is, what made you decide which type of brand of dog treat you would use? Okay. Now this participant said that they buy dog treats, right? And they have a dog, right? But when they were asked that, they don't know anything. In reality, they don't have a dog, most likely, or they don't know anything about dog treats. So how are they going to answer this question? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to copy the question, and they're going to go into ChatGPT. They're going to get an answer, and they're going to paste it back, right? Then, if they do a good job with that, you will never know. You would think that, oh, this is a good participant, and they provided a great, thoughtful response. And that's exactly what happens. But with the event streamer, you could actually see that and identify them as being a bad respondent, right? So here, you could see that the person is clearly copying the question. Then the cursor goes off the screen. There's a bit of a break. Then it goes back. And then all of a sudden, there's a full paragraph that's ready-made, right? Now, the paragraph has some has some asterisks in it, which is a telltale sign of ChatGPT. And so this respondent sanitizes it, okay, removes all of the asterisks, right? And once they feel like, okay, this looks pretty good, right, they're not going to catch on to me, right, then submits the response. And being able to observe that directly very clearly allows us to identify participants, right, who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, who are cheating, and who are likely bad quality participants. Again, one of the defining features of survey fraud globally is that people are taking surveys in a language that they don't know very well. So all you have to do is engage them in a conversation, right, with follow-ups, and they're almost guaranteed to do something that will reveal that they don't actually speak the language. And you can observe that directly by looking at them copy-pasting from ChatGPT and things like that. So that is a really great way of catching bad quality participants that's built directly into the system. And it is that exact system that can also be used to identify AI agents. And so let's get back now to the AI agent case. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you AI and what it looks like when an AI agent takes a similar survey. Okay, so this is the Engage system. When somebody completes a survey, you can kind of see each row basically is a participant. And actually, you could see right here that there's like this little red bot icon here, and that means that the system automatically caught the participant as being an AI agent. And let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to just click within the survey, and hopefully the connection here is good enough that it will open, or maybe, let's see. Well, it's a good thing I know what the password is. CloudResearch. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can. Oh, here we go. So, okay, we're able to troubleshoot that pretty nicely. So here is a survey that was taken by an AI agent, and if you would look at this survey, you would have no way. Here it is. It's basically answering in a way that, again, it's passing all the attention checks, etc. Then we could see the session recording. okay? And it's the session recording that will allow us to see the mouse movement and just compare that to the mouse movements of the human beings. Can you see, like, immediately how different it is? First of all, the mouse is stationary. There's no jitter. There's no randomness, right? And what the AI does is that it thinks about what it needs to do. While it's thinking, the cursor is stationary, right? And as soon as it makes a decision, it jumps to its target, and then it makes a straight line. There's no randomness. There's no jitter. There's no arc. There's no overshooting. All of that stuff that is very clearly a sign of a human participant, we can easily tell is actually not a human, but an AI agent. Now, this AI agent is that Claude bot that I showed you in the beginning. So it's very easy to spin out a Claude agent to take a survey, but they're super easy to detect. So the question is, are there more sophisticated AI agents that can have their behavioral metrics mimic human beings? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, there are many, many different kinds of AI agents that differ in terms of how sophisticated they can get. There are off-the-shelf ones that are really easy to create. Generally, they're very easy to detect because they don't allow you to add libraries of mouse movements, et cetera, to mimic human beings. So they're outside of the scope of most users, right? Now, if somebody wants to use a much more sophisticated one, they're going to need to be an expert in software. And it's going to be a lot more expensive. And at that point, the economics just becomes not there. So that's something that I want to talk about next. Overall, however, the main message so far in terms of the PNAS paper is that the claim was that AI agents are indistinguishable from people. That is simply not true. Not if you look at the behavior of the AI agents. It is true if you look at the responses of the AI agents within the survey, but not at behavioral metrics. The behavioral metrics are trivial, in fact, for most AI agents to detect. Now, they're not trivial for all AI agents to detect, as I'll talk about next. So let me tell you a little bit about how we address this issue in CloudResearch and what we actually do on a basically daily basis to deal with this problem. So we have what we call the red team and the blue team. Okay? The red team, both of these teams are basically computer science professors who are at CloudResearch, and the red team is these are like AI, people who teach AI courses and things like that, like very, very capable and skilled computer scientists. And their task is to build the best AI agent that they can possibly build. So we are very confident that actually the best AI agents for taking surveys are at CloudResearch. Because literally we have people who this is what they do every day. And in fact, we incentivize them to create AI agents that could bypass all of our systems. Okay? So that's the red team. Okay? The blue team, that's a different team. And their task is to block whatever it is that the red team comes up with. So to essentially come up with countermeasures for sophisticated AI agents. And the reason that I'm very confident that all AI agents, no matter how sophisticated they are, can be detected is because I'm very confident that we have the most sophisticated ones and we can detect all of them. Now, the reason why the way that we know that is because we actually run regular controlled tests. And some of these tests we've published on our website. Some of them are going to eventually make it into the published literature. It takes a very long time for that to happen. But I can tell you about the most recent tests where we had 500 AI agents. And these were different types of AI agents that were built by our red team, and 500 human participants. And it was a blind test. And the goal was, can we identify the humans from the AI agents? And we were able to do that with 100% accuracy using behavioral metrics. and virtually no false positives. In other words, every person was identified as a person, every bot was identified as a bot. And this is just a snapshot of the data. It's kind of a busy figure, but every column here is a particular participant, either a bot or a person. And the columns are different signals that we have identified that are signs of an AI agent. So we now have over 300 signals, and that are unique to the way that AI agents behave. Some of them are that they responded to a certain stimulus in 9 milliseconds, whereas the fastest that a human being can do it is in 45 milliseconds. For example, there are 300 signals like that, and we have an entire machine learning algorithm that essentially looks at all of these signals as a participant is going through the survey on Engage, and immediately, as soon as a person is identified as a bot or as an AI agent, that little red bot picture comes up, and the person is automatically excluded from the study. But we were able to essentially show that our ability to detect these things is perfect, essentially. Now, we published a white paper. There's a code here that you could scan, or you could just get it. If you can come by our booth, and we'll be happy to share the white paper. It's also available on our website that describes the methodology of this study that we did. But honestly, we're running these studies every couple of weeks, and every time it's with new, more sophisticated AI agents. And so we're constantly updating the methodology, and we're constantly updating our data. But overall, what we know with a high level of confidence as of now is that behavior metrics, which consists of mouse trajectories, keystroke dynamics, response timing, velocity, text patterns is very big, navigation. There are all kinds of things that go into it, but behavior metrics is a perfect way of distinguishing between humans and AI agents. And so before I finish, I just want to reflect a little bit on what we've learned from essentially like just doing this all the time. Like I'm not the one who creates these AI agents, but I am on meetings with that team a couple times a week, and I could tell you just from what I've learned from being involved in their research, is that the economics is just not there. In the PNAS paper, what Sean Westwood did, right, was he created AI agents to take his own Qualtrics survey. He did not intercept a study that was being run on Connect or on some other platform, okay? If you launch a study on Connect, it'll be mostly finished in a couple of hours. The ability to create even a single AI agent in that time is just not there. It takes a long time to deploy an agent, right? And it costs money. You like run out of tokens very quickly. And you realize that if somebody wanted to make money, it would just be faster for them to do it themselves and easier, right? That just the technology in the economics is just simply not quite there yet. But the idea of being able to deploy 500 AI agents to like swarm a study, it takes a lot longer. It takes a long time and a lot of resources to be able to do that, and so it just is not there yet. I have here a pretty busy slide, but I'm happy to share it with you if any of you are interested. Just get in touch with me for these slides. But essentially what we try to do here is we try to categorize different types of AI agents. So there are like agentic browsers like ChatGPT Atlas and Perplexity Comment and Opera Neon, and there are browsing extensions from Gemini and Claude and Nano, and coding approaches where you can take like Selenium Playwright and add a bunch of code to it and make it really sophisticated. So and these things are coming out, new ones are coming out literally like every other day. So, on our Slack channel, like every other day, our red team is like, oh, look at this, I found this other new thing now from Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini that like can do things that it couldn't do before. So the field is changing very, very quickly. These things are becoming more and more sophisticated. And so with all that, I would just like to reflect on where I think things are and where I think things are going based on what we've learned. And that is that we're certainly living in very interesting times. The technology is just incredible and it's constantly changing. However, I'm extremely optimistic about the ability to create solutions to AI agents faster and better than the ability to create more sophisticated AI agents. In other words, as the AI agents are going to become more and more sophisticated, the solutions are going to become more and more sophisticated, and the solutions are going to outpace the sophistication of the AI agents. That's what I think, based on everything that we've been doing so far. And certainly, currently, the solutions by far outpace the current capabilities of AI agents to really pose as human beings. I have a lot of, I really love that we have this red team and blue team, because I've seen that if we are the ones who are creating the AI agents, rather than, in other words, we're being proactive about it, rather than waiting for some other like nefarious agent to create them and then trying to be reactive to what someone else did. I think that's what allows us to actually have an edge and to be able to create these solutions effectively. And so I'll leave you on that positive note, is that in that I think that this problem is not as intractable as the PNAS paper makes it seem. I think some of the suggestions in the paper were like, well, maybe, the survey research has become so fraught with danger that maybe we should just go back to pencil and paper surveys and sending people surveys to their homes. I think that that's kind of premature. I don't think we need to go back to the horse and buggy days of survey research just yet. Of course, we have to see how everything develops, but my outlook is optimistic. And so thank you for your attention, and happy to take questions.
Hello, thank you for the great presentation. Something that we are doing at the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is just to making money from surveys more difficult by extending the time from the participant or AI agent or a fraudster taking the eligibility survey to the moment when they can start participating in the study. Let's say we will reach out to you in 2 days and let you know if you qualify for the study, and then making the study longitudinal so that they can collect the money at the end of the study. It's sometimes several months after they start the study. To what extent do you think these methods can prevent people from participating, just to make it less lucrative for them to take studies like that?
So do you mean like make it less lucrative, or just make it more, there's more of like a hassle factor? Like you're still paying them. I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Yeah, what would be your estimation, like what part of the fraudulent participants would this remove? Yeah,
so if you make a study longitudinal, then so it depends. I guess I'll just talk about Connect, for example, right? So on Connect, in order to become a participant on Connect, somebody has to demonstrate that they have a valid government-issued ID, for example, right? And they have to go through an entire onboarding process, so it's very difficult. That's, by the way, another thing that makes it very difficult to swarm a study with bots, because if you want 100 bots to take your study on a platform where every account has to have a government ID, right? How are you going to do that? That's not easy, but it's not impossible. So what people do is, and you find this on some of those websites that I talked about, you have a legitimate US person with a government-issued ID, get an account, and then they'll sell it to someone in Bangladesh or in Russia or whatever. And then you have a person who is basically a fraudulent participant, but with a real account. Now, in a situation like that, would they be deterred by, let's say, a longitudinal study? I don't think in that scenario a person would be deterred, because they would be more than happy to do. It's just another opportunity for them to make more money, right? And so the challenge is to keep people from engaging in those kinds of fraudulent activities, but to, for example, to make them take a longitudinal study in that scenario, I would say probably not. And the other thing that I would think can be an issue is that, like, the more difficult you make it for people, the more good participants are also likely to take it. And so that can, I'm sure you probably have considered that as well, right? Because like it becomes a potentially problem with, representativeness and things like that. So I would love to talk to you more about the exact, I think that I probably don't fully understand all the details of what you guys are doing, but I'd love to know more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question back to the sort of economics part of it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You talked about AI agents, essentially, or like the process of making a large number of AI agents to sort of flood a survey. And the way you presented it made it sound like you'd sort of have to do that for every single survey you want to run. Could a person create, say, one complicated agent, today, and then apply that to all of their surveys going forward, essentially over time, earning back the economic cost of building that first bot?
Yeah, but the economic cost is also actually to take the survey, right? Because it costs tokens, and it takes up a lot of tokens. And in fact, there are lots of other problems there as well. Very often, like the AI agents, even the sophisticated ones, get stuck. Like if you ever use an agentic AI, right? Like it spins out a browser, and then you tell it, oh, I want you to buy me tickets for this and that, and it'll get like 30% done, and then you'll stop, and it'll say, I need you to step in and to help me out. So that actually happens quite often as well, and that's also part of the economics, because it's not just like you let it run and then it just like takes 100 surveys for you all the time, right? So sometimes you need to actually be around and to monitor it. And very often, after it takes 2 or 3 surveys, it'll just tell you like, you're out of your tokens for the day, and then you just can't do anymore. That's the kind of economics that becomes difficult to deal with.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
This represents a shift from us checking responses to checking behavior. But the next move for the mouse is to program agents that adapt to behaviors, little mouse jitters, little typing and then deleting. What are your thoughts on what the next shift then will be from responses to behavior to what? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so again, this is something that we're currently trying to get ahead of. So we're trying to create an AI agent that is able to mimic, those behavior metrics as much as possible. And there's just so much there that it's not something that can be easily done right now. If you're asking, like, what after that, like, what comes next? That's a great question. I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Might be a silly question, but you started out by saying for years we've already been worried about bots. Like you told us, guess what, folks? Those weren't bots, those were just people. So, silly. Were there bots? Was that a myth? Because what you showed Claude doing is what I think a lot of us thought. Well, bots can already do this, and they've been doing it for years.
Yeah, it's a myth.
What's that?
It was a myth. It was a myth. I mean, the paper that we published in APS details all of the studies that we did to show that whenever something looks like a bot, it's actually a person. But I'll give you a couple examples. So if you remember, this whole bot crisis started in 2018 on Mechanical Turk, back when Mechanical Turk was still like the most popular, right? And everybody was using it, most people were happy with it. All of a sudden, like people's studies just got swarmed with terrible data, and before you know it, there were articles in Wired and Gizmodo and the New York Times. Everybody started talking about how bots are ruining social science, right? And so that just became the meme, right? Everybody was talking about bots are ruining social science, on Mechanical Turk in particular. So we were working very closely with Mechanical Turk at the time, and we were looking at these terrible data, and we were just as everybody else trying to figure out like what's going on there. Are these bots, or is there something else going on? And one of the things we noticed was that, at Mechanical Turk, at the time, you had primarily people in America and in India. And our hypothesis was that it was actually people from India who were on Mechanical Turk who figured out how to infiltrate US-based surveys, okay? And so we were lucky enough to have some research assistants at CloudResearch who were from India, and they were like super familiar with the culture and the language. And so we did some really like fun things. So we created a survey, and we put a picture of an eggplant, right? Just a picture of an eggplant, and we asked participants, just tell us name it, okay? And so all the good participants said it was an eggplant, okay? But all the bad participants, I'm talking about 99% of them, said it was a brinjal. And it's like, well, what's a brinjal? Well, brinjal is in India how people, right? English is a official language in India, but there are some differences, right? Some cultural differences, linguistic differences. And so everybody who was providing bad data just said, that's a brinjal. And when we showed them a trash can, right, they said it was a dustbin. And we showed them a period at the end of a sentence, right, they said it was a full stop. And so like, yeah, these are just, it became very, very clear. And then we were able to show that actually, we were able to show priming effects, and we were able to show some of these patterns of like acquiescence bias and saying yes to things. And we did this kind of research for many, many years, and that's what the paper in APS is about. It basically like describes all of that stuff. But simply put, I'm very certain that all these things that we were afraid of as bots were actually people. But now there's a real possibility for actual bots. And so now we have to start taking it seriously, especially because there's this whole network global network of people who can potentially get their hands on those bots, and that could become a real problem. Yeah.
Just trying to get a better grasp on the scope of the potential problem here, and building on the previous question. I'm wondering if you use approaches that are well validated in many ways, sort of catching human fraudulent responses and filtering those folks out, or you use something like the connected group participants list. What would you say is a potential possibility that a participant would be flagged as an AI agent? Do you think it's pretty low if you use those types of checks and you use something like the approved participant list? Or do you think using something like Engage right now in this moment is a huge necessity?
Well, we did those studies, and so we looked at bad participants, and virtually none of them, maybe one or two, are agents from the studies that we did. So I don't see this as being a critical problem like today. But the problem is tomorrow it might be, right? In other words, tomorrow all of a sudden people might start using a particular kind of AI agents, right? And so I believe that a platform like Engage is actually the best defense because it's going to get more sophisticated as the AI agent threat is going to become more sophisticated. And this platform, unlike other platforms out there, like Qualtrics, was built from the ground up to specifically for this. Again, because when we build the platform, when we built Engage, we built AI agents into the system. And so we immediately realized, wait a second, we're providing the researchers with the ability to use AI agents in in a good way, right? In a way that facilitates research. But what if someone wanted to do it for other more fraudulent ends? And so we said no, we have to build protections for this from the ground up, and that's where this whole event streamer emerged from. Yeah, any other? Yeah, please.
The estimated cost of using such techniques to detect AI agents, how much is it affordable or accessible for researchers to use this?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to if you want to use Engage, just come by, come by and talk to us. But basically, it's very similar to Qualtrics. So there's institutions can get access to Engage accounts and have, and institutions are already doing that so that you can use Engage alongside Qualtrics. I mean, some people are replacing Qualtrics with Engage because basically it could do whatever Qualtrics could do, but it has other capabilities like the ability to collect open-ended data and to analyze open-ended data and all kinds of other things. You could actually design studies where you could just talk to it and say, I want a 2x2 study to do that, and it will just design your entire research flow. You can analyze your data using R code. So there's a lot. It basically has AI in its guts, and you can really do a lot with it. So institutions have been essentially the way that they've been approaching us is just to be able to get an institutional license. So this way, all the researchers will be able to use it without having to pay out of pocket, which is kind of the way Qualtrics is used. Yeah.
Really fascinating stuff. I'm concerned with these efforts to kind of increasingly monitor the quality of the sample pool. Is the sample pool can get quite small, especially if you're studying hard-to-reach participants. It's very shockingly easy to exhaust that pool, especially when there's a lot of researchers targeting the same people. Can you speak more or less about, or you said a lot about preventing bad responses, but how can we preserve the good responses? And is there any possibility of kind of growing the sample so that this becomes a sustainable resource?
Yeah, so I would say that, again, sorry to be plugging my textbook, but this is exactly the kind of thing that the textbook talks about. It's a very important question, and I don't think I could do it justice in 2 seconds. But I will say that if you want to be able to have access to hard-to-reach samples, you can't just use a single platform. I mean, if it's really if you want, specific minority groups in Austin, Texas, right? You're going to need to use the essentially survey ecosystem. There are 500 providers, around the world with all kinds of capabilities and strengths and weaknesses. They have data quality problems, but the point is to be able to deal with those problems while, as you said, preserving your ability your feasibility. And it is possible. It is possible to do if you essentially utilize the capabilities of the survey industry as a whole. Now, at CloudResearch, we actually try to do that for you. So in addition to Connect, which is our proprietary sample, we actually have something called Prime Panels, which is we have partnerships with hundreds of other platforms. And if you come to us and you say, I want a minority group in Austin, Texas, we will get that for you, not through Connect, but through our partnerships, but using all of our tools to be able to maintain data quality. So that's a kind of quick answer. But for a more in-depth answer in terms of what are the different platforms and how do they differ from each other and when should I use one versus the other? So chapter 9 in the textbook, kind of goes into that, and happy to share that with you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm curious about this alternative approach, which is to gamify data collection, which is the economic incentive. I'm just curious what your thoughts on the prospect of that is compared to this.
To gamify the survey. So here's what we've done research on gamification, and there's a bit of a unfortunate effect that happens, which is that the fraudulent respondents don't care, and the good respondents, they like it, but they're going to be good respondents even without it. So that's kind of the That's kind of the thing that we found. There's always a conversation between how do you improve your data? Is it through improving the quality of your survey, right? Or is it through by getting rid of bad participants? So what we've done studies where we compared like a terrible survey, like really long survey, 30 minutes, poorly designed, bubble hell, that sort of thing, compared to a 5-minute survey that's really well designed. And what you find is that the participants, is there a difference in quality? Maybe a little bit, but the good participants, they're going to be good participants even if it's like difficult. If you incentivize them and you pay them, they're going to do fine, right? And the bad participants, they're going to be bad in the 5-minute survey, and in fact, they'll get much happier about it because they're like, oh, it's an easy survey to do, and I can make as much money. So that's sort of the paradox with improving the quality. Certainly, we should all work, hard to improve the quality of the participant experience because it's, just goes without saying that we want to, from an ethical perspective and from just many other perspectives, we want the survey to be as engaging as possible, and of course that helps. But it's, I don't believe it's going to remove the problem of fraudulent participants. Yeah.
Is there any measure that a participant is being identified as bots, or they frequently are providing bad data to team, like block or removed from the platform to not be able to participate?
I'm sorry,
When somebody frequently is being identified as bots, or they're providing bad data, are there any measures for removing these participants from the platform?
Yeah. On Connect, participants are, as soon as we have a whole bunch of metrics that if an account is identified as like using a bot, it's automatically removed. If a participant provides bad data quality multiple times, the participant is removed. We have a whole bunch of internal ways of looking at that as well. Just to give you an example, something that I was personally dealing with last week. So like, for example, there are like some medical conditions that we ask people to fill out. And if people fill out like all of them, where some of them can't coexist with others, so we can tell, right? And so we monitor for like consistency of demographic and personal information that people provide. And if something something raises a red flag, those people are removed. And I will just say that we very much it's a partnership. So when people so when you use Connect and you find like some participants are clearly like doing something bad, there's a way that you can mark that participant in our system. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get rid of them, immediately. But when we have multiple, we triangulate it, we have multiple people reporting problematic behavior, then that's when we consider doing that for the health of the overall system. So, okay. I think we have time maybe for one last question. Yeah.
I'm based at a university that is not in the United States, and anytime we're submitting ethics, they want to make sure that survey platforms that we're using don't store data in the United States on servers. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Engage survey platform's data storage.
I think Ruben you want to speak to that? Or?
Yeah, so we do have a capability of spinning up servers in specific regions. It's not the most cost-efficient way to come onto our platform, but if it's something that you really need to do at scale, we can accommodate it.
As in, if you were just conducting 1 or 2 studies, it would not make financial sense to do?
I would suggest, yeah, it probably would not make sense to use our platform.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time. 10:40 was the time that we had to finish. But thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate all your questions, and happy to talk to you more if you want to continue the conversation. We are at our booth, so please feel free to come by.